So if we look back into our history books, the ones that we flip in our classes, you won't see a lot of stories or hear a lot of stories like the ones you're gonna hear today, or even your own, right? So I'm not sure if Martin Luther King also implied that homosexuals or equality with homosexuals or LGBTQ was part of his dream. But if it wasn't part of his I Have a Dream speech, I think now is the time for us to make it part of the history. You guys have a huge responsibility. I know there's a lot of pressure. But it's up to us to script those new history books, to say those stories, to speak those stories, so that decades from now, when kids look in their history books, our stories and your stories can be reflected back at each other.
And I was one of the few queer people on that campus that was living out and proud. And there was a lot of pushback from that. There were a lot of school counselors that would stop us in the hallway and pull our hands apart and tell us, if you're gonna have to interact that way, then it's just like catch and release fishing. You're just gonna reel in, hold your hands, and then you're just gonna let go, which seems really cruel to me anyway. And I'm a vegetarian, and so fishing and hurting animals and wasn't really speaking to me on any level. Closed office doors with vice principals and then principals saying this isn't okay. This is too pornographic for our other students. This is way too much, so y'all need to quit. And, as soon as that person would leave, the guidance counselor would then say to us, if this were San Francisco, this would be fine. But we're living in Orangevale, so you gotta know your audience and your surroundings. And that was a lot of class time that we were missing just to be pulled into those conversations. An adult, sitting down with a 13-year-old and saying, your identity is pornographic. There's a birthday story, which I will insert real quick. So I was born on April Fool's Day. I know my life's a joke. So the birth story is that I was supposed to be a little boy born in March, but instead I was assigned female at birth on the first day of April, April Fools. Just revising that story of just oh, by the way, just kidding, joke's on you again. I don't know what it is, a mix of both, maybe neither, I don't know, but we'll figure that out later. And also just recognizing that, pronoun usage is important for folks, and that'll always be very valuable for me. So, yeah, if we can start getting into a culture in which I'm not necessarily outing myself every time I say, my name is Steph, my pronouns are they, them.
And then I say, and also thank you to my partner. And I used a very specific word, in Spanish, the word novia means your romantic partner. I felt I heard crickets in the room, and I just saw, I was out to my parents at this time. I had let them in on that, but my dad's side, on my abuelitos on that side, they had no idea, and so I just saw this look of horror on their face, they almost took away from my own celebration of this moment, right? But I felt so amazing, and I just felt in that moment I reclaimed my right to tell my own story and to tell to self-determine for myself.
Yeah.
All right. Singing is one of my mediums. Yes. I feel along with queerdom comes art, the language of art. You just speak the language of art. All right. Movimiento, dejarme mover como los árboles, me dejo sin importar los consejos. Ya no le temo lo sagrado que fluye por mis huesos. Movimiento, movimiento. Thank you.
Brianna is quaking.
There may not be a lot of safe spaces for her. She may not be able to go home, or maybe there's people that she's not able to speak to. So obviously, this is a necessity. This is a source of whether it be therapy or rather expression for her. So I think it's necessary for people to have a platform where they can go and talk.
I think for me, we are beings that thrive off of stories, right? We never get tired of learning stories, hearing stories, and how much richness that adds to our lives. And so I think it's so important to hear so many different stories throughout one's lifetime that can only, how can it harm you? It can only enrich your life.
Yeah, and I would say, like, speaking to storytelling, that, you know, there are so many histories that have been erased or just, like, thrown out the window for, you know, the people that have come in and, like, colonized those spaces. You know, we do only typically hear one perspective, and I think, like, holding spaces like this isn't necessarily, like, extra treatment, but more so a move towards, like, equitable treatment for, like, any sort of, like, marginalized community in which, like, they're just, like, sort of, like, cast aside and their identities are erased.
Language is so socially constructed, and so we have such a power to like shape shift language and how we use it and how we intend to use it.
It's almost like the word that starts with a B, right? I don't know if I can say that. No. So women have been reclaiming a lot of words in the women's movement that technically have been demeaning, but now we're reclaiming those words and using it in a powerful way.
But in terms of, like, people using, like, oh, like, that's so gay, like, as in that's so dumb, I mean, an argument that I have heard is just like, well, okay, but if that were, like, your name in place of that, like, oh, that's such a Steph thing to do, like, that's such a whatever. I mean, that puts it into perspective for some folks, because some people just use it as, like, they don't necessarily, like, associate that so much with an identity as they do as just, like, slang for the day.